Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Comic Arts Workshop. My name is Ramon Gill. I'm the organizer. We've been doing this since 2016, 17. I don't know anymore. I'm not sure. But tonight we are happy to have with us Janna Morishima, who was with us before, but it was on a panel. This time we're having her do solo. And she has so much to offer us tonight, and I'm really excited. So, without further ado, I will let her introduce herself. Jana, tell us about yourself, what you do, and what your career track has been.
Okay. I am currently a literary agent with my own business called Janna, where I specialize in comics creators and graphic novelists. I say visual storytellers on my website. And then I also founded an online community called Kids Comics Unite, which is geared towards education and also connections between creators who are focused on making comics for kids. But my career in comics goes kind of far back. I started at Scholastic in 2001 or 2002, around then. Actually, I started in the art department. My first job there was working as the assistant to the creative director, David Saylor. And while I was working for him, um, I started getting really fascinated with graphic novels. The book that really jump started things for me then was Blankets by Craig Thompson. I forget what year it came out, but it was like right around that time when I started in publishing. So we together got this idea of starting a new imprint that was focused on comics for kids and pitched it to the publisher at the time, who was Jean Fywell. And she gave us a green light. So we started Scholastic Graphics. I was there until 2000, I feel like 2007, I think, is when basically I left the company when the market crashed and a whole lot, it has just had ripple effects everywhere in the economy, including the publishing industry. And Scholastic went through major reorganizations and the publisher was fired. Fywell was fired. And Barbara Marcus left. The whole uh, top management changed. I was really upset about many things, and I ended up leaving and going to Diamond Comics, which everybody knows has been in the news. Um, I worked there for 3 years as part of their Diamond Book Distributors, and my title was Director of the Kids Group. My actual role was to kind of be like in-house business development for publishers that they worked with to help them understand the children's market. Because my boss, Kuyu Liang, who was the head of Diamond Book Distributors then, believed that kids' comics was a big business opportunity. And I think he was right. I think I also saw that, but maybe we were slightly ahead of our time, just a tiny bit, because I'm not sure the comics publishers then they weren't quite as enthusiastic as we were. So, um, that job only lasted for 3 years. I got really burnt out, everybody. I was so depressed by the end of my time there. And I just decided I didn't know what I was doing anymore. So I walked away from publishing completely for almost 5 years or so.
Wow, okay.
I worked with my husband at the time, who he's an artist, he's a photographer. I was kind of running his business. And I think that experience is what sort of set the stage for me to become an entrepreneur and to start my own agency. Because working with an artist made me understand what it's like to be one person trying to do everything, trying to, you know, practice your craft, but also run what you need to, you know, run a business at the same time. It's a lot of things to do. Um, and then I started freelancing as an editor. I worked with the New York City Department of Education as a consultant, and that's what brought me back into book publishing. And while I was working as a freelance editor, I started realizing like, oh, maybe I should try being an agent. So that's what brought me to start my agency, which I did in 2020. Is that a good introduction?
That is a great introduction. Now I'm curious though. I mean, I know that you were working with graphic novels at Scholastic and then you went to Diamond. But are there any other literary agencies that specialize or specifically work with graphic novelists?
Yes, there are. Jen Linan is very well known. Britt Cease, Judy Hansen. Those are names that just jump right off. There's other people. Jonah probably knows better
No,
than.
but I'm not talking about agencies, individuals, but an entire agency just focused on graphic novels.
Well, Britt and actually all the three people I mentioned, they each have their own agency.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I always thought that there were literary agencies. There were a couple of people on there who liked working on graphic novels, among other
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's the case for the most part, but there are some people out there who definitely specialize.
Now, how long after you decided to become an agent for graphic novels did Kids Comics Unite come into being?
It actually came into being slightly before
Oh,
because
really?
I, well, I started really getting serious about planning the launch of my agency in probably like the summer of 2019.
Hmm.
And some things I did is I attended Baltimore Comic Con, I attended New York Comic Con, and I attended um, Anime New York City. And I was looking for clients. But at the same time that I was doing that, I also was thinking to myself, I need to put myself back into the thick of things on the publishing side. And I thought, why don't I just start a meetup and I can bring editors and agents and creators together in person in New York City and we'll just hang out at a bar and we'll talk about comics. And that's a way that I'll kind of reignite all my connections. And so I did that. The first meeting was in December of 2019. And I didn't call it Kids Comics Unite at that time. It was just like a Kids Comics meetup. But also, right around that time, I thought, well, maybe I should make an online space where we could continue the conversation if we want to. And I found out about this platform called Mighty Networks, which I think was a predator. Like, I think Discord didn't exist when I found out about Mighty Networks. I think it was sort of like Facebook groups. And then there were these other companies that were kind of trying to,
It was like a customizable Facebook group.
yeah, exactly, like a customizable Facebook group. And I thought, oh, well, that's pretty cool. I'll just create an account. And I literally feel like the phrase Kids Comics Unite was the first thing that came into my head. And I just typed in Kids Comics Unite, create account. And then when at the meeting, the meetup with in New York City, I told people like, "Oh, I created this place. You should join my account." And gave people the link. And so, maybe 15 people joined after that first meeting. And then we had our second meeting in February of 2020. And then in March of 2020 is when, the shutdown happened because of COVID. And that's when I started doing a free office hour every week. Kind of like you, Ramon, you're just doing something to give back to the community. So I did that and it was word of mouth. So people just started saying like, "Oh, there's this office hour. It's every week. You can join Kids Comics Unite." And that's how it started growing. And then my mindset shift about it being a business happened because of the pandemic, because I really freaking needed money. I needed to pay my bills so badly. So I, my back was against the wall, and I thought, oh my God, okay, I'm going to launch a course. I'm going to teach a course to people about how to break into comics. So I announced it in May of 2020 through the community. And I think I got about 20 or 25 students that summer. And then it went well. And that's what made me realize, oh, I actually accidentally started a business, another business, in addition to my other business.
At the early days of the comic arts workshop, we also did Mighty Networks.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, and it was the it what happened was I made it a I had committed myself to putting out educational content once a week,
Mm-hmm.
and I got burnt out,
Mm-hmm. It's
and it was
really,
just too
yeah.
much. It's like after like I think 3 months, it's like, I was like what else do I, what else can I put on? And then I sort of put it on pause, and eventually I realized, I need to come up with something else, and I think I canceled our Mighty Networks
Mm-hmm.
subscription.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It's
but
easy to burn out.
it's a great way to connect when you have a community. It's a great way to
Mhm.
pass out information and have people interact.
Yeah.
Um, and I had a question, but of course I didn't write it down. My other question was going to be like, how was it hard to reconnect after being gone for 5 years? But you already answered that. So let me go through my list and see what else is over there. Um, where's There you go. Okay, here's a follow-up question. So you were when you were at Diamond, you were saying that you and your boss felt that the kids' graphic novels were there was money to be made in there, and you felt like you were ahead of your time a bit, right? And quite honestly, I think that perhaps the publishing industry, like the traditional publishing industry, has caught on, but I
Hmm.
feel like mainstream comics has still not caught on,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I mean, yes, but I don't know. That is such an interesting question.
I mean, I see DC coming up with like a couple of kids' graphic novels, but they're really not leaning into it.
Yeah. Well, DC Comics, I don't know if things have changed from when I was communicating with them because they were very not interested in kids comics when I was trying to get them interested. Um, but yeah, there is the whole US traditional comics publishing world is, in my opinion, very narrowly focused on a very narrow demographic. And I'm glad to see that the industry as a whole is growing and evolving so much because comics is just a storytelling medium. So you can tell, I mean, I'm just repeating what I'm sure everybody here in this Zoom agrees with and has heard a million times, but it's just a way to tell a story. And so you can tell any story in comics format, and we could easily have so many more types of stories told in comics. I think the big problem right now is discoverability because there's just like how do you get readers to find out about new material? That is really, really, really hard. And that's where I guess publishers like DC and Marvel or Scholastic Graphics or First Second or any publishers that's been around long enough, even like Silver Sprocket, they're known for a very specific thing. So readers go to them to look for a specific kind of content. And that's kind of the holy grail, I think, is to get known for a specific point of view. But like romance, for example, I feel like there should be a comics romance publisher or an imprint. Like, who is doing this? I think there is a huge readership for this that is totally being underserved. And the same is true for other genres.
Absolutely, absolutely. I feel like we're just scratching the surface,
Yeah.
and we need to keep on. But actually, what I think is similar to what you were saying is, so I piggyback on it, is that I think the bigger problem is that not enough people read graphic novels. You know, if you think about all the people who like to read novels, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have X number of people who like to read
Mm-hmm.
fiction, and X number of
Mm-hmm.
people who like to read nonfiction. X people who like to read romance, X people
Mm-hmm.
who like to read,
Mm-hmm.
but I imagine and I suspect that the X number for people who read graphic novels is way smaller than any of those than any of those
Well,
sections.
I'm not sure about that.
There are definitely tons and tons of kids who read graphic novels. I mean, the sales numbers for some of the best-selling graphic novels for kids, for example, Dave Pilkey, Raina Telgemeier, like more than match up to the sales numbers for some of the best-selling adult books. In 2021, the number one best-selling book in the US of any book, any category, any age range was actually Dogman.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I think it's true, probably, Ramon, that for adult graphic novels, that readership may be smaller than for, adult fiction. But overall, I think comics has categories that can still match up well with certain categories for adult.
Yeah.
I guess I'm coming from where you look at countries like Japan or Korea, where everybody, even
Hmm.
adults, the number of the percentage of adults who read graphic novels or comics compared to the United States,
Well, right.
it's just not a common or a norm that an adult would be reading graphic novels compared to those countries.
Yes, I agree. But that part of the issue is that they have had thriving comics publishing industries that focused on every demographic for decades. And in the United States, our comics industry was artificially stunted and narrowly geared toward a certain type of reader for way, way too long. And then we had to, kind of start from scratch with like building up the readership with kids, which is what Scholastic Graphics was doing and is doing, and now many other imprints are doing. And now we have to build the pathway for those young readers who are growing up and maturing to find the type of content that they want to continue reading. Because not every kid grows up and wants to read DC and Marvel.
Right, exactly. I just realized it'd be interesting to find somebody in those markets, ask them whether or not video games and the internet and smartphones have affected sales for for graphic novels and comics in their country. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'll need to find somebody. Anyways, let's keep going. I have another question. So amazingly enough, this is the first time, well, aside from our last appearance here, it's the first time we've had an agent on this podcast in about 3 or 4 years.
Mhm.
We had one years ago, and I think it's high time that we had another one. So let me ask you, what role does an agent play in the career or the life of a graphic novelist?
Well, an agent is kind of like a salesperson slash business manager for a creator. So, what an agent does is work with a creator to help them develop a pitch that they can then um, submit to publishers. And once the publisher is interested and makes an offer, or if multiple publishers make offers, then the agent's job is to negotiate those offers and then negotiate a contract and then kind of be there as a troubleshooter if necessary. I think one of the key ways that an agent who specializes in graphic novels can be of assistance to a creator that's different from a literary agent who doesn't have any experience in graphic novels is that the production process for graphic novels is so labor intensive and time intensive, and having an agent who understands that whole process can be very helpful, I think. And also to sort of possibly help watch out for red flags, like publishers who have proposed a schedule that's completely unrealistic or something like that. Um, and then also to basically just be a like a coach slash therapist a little bit. I think a lot of agents play that role.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you just mentioned that graphic being an agent for graphic novels is a little bit more labor intensive,
Hmm.
right? And I'm assuming it's because usually with regular prose writers, they almost always usually, I think, deliver a finished manuscript when they
Mhm.
pitch it, right?
Mhm.
So in theory, what they've given the publisher is a finished product, maybe some tweaking going on.
Mhm.
Whereas I know from previous guests and previous and with you as well, is
Mhm.
that publishers, actually you told me this,
Mhm.
that the publishers prefer to see the property in the pitch stage, so
Mhm.
they can have a hand in shaping
Mhm.
the graphic novel, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So my question is, why? So you said that, it's harder to sell or to sell a finished graphic novel to a publisher. Now, um, I guess why is that? I mean, I know it's finished, but if the author is willing to make changes or to
Mhm.
redo things, why would it be harder for a graphic novelist to sell a finished graphic novel?
Well, because of what you alluded to, which is that the publishers do want to be able to help shape it. I guess I think of book publishing as being the Venn diagram where art meets commerce. And the
Mm-hmm.
creator's job is to be the artist, and the publisher's job is to be the commerce part, and think about the target audience and the market and selling into their big accounts and things like that. So they're thinking of it in a very commercial way. And so they would prefer to be able to help the creator make those make any changes that would help it
Do
have
you
the best
think
chance for success
do
in the
you
market.
think because the graphic novel is usually is much closer to a finished form, that the creator has a harder time with accepting notes and feedback
No,
compared
not
to prose?
necessarily. Well, I think the problem is that it is so difficult to make changes once you've drawn an entire book. It is just
That's true.
no,
You're right. Yeah.
too much work. It's every people do recognize it's like too much work. So therefore, oftentimes if an editor sees, I have tried to do this. I have tried to sell projects that were basically done or like completely penciled, let's say. And it is really hard because editors will look at it and they'll be like, I think this could have been changed or this could change and make it better, but I'm afraid to ask them to make these changes because I that's a lot to ask them. They've already done all this work. And so it's easier for me to just say, sorry, not for me, than to like I don't even want to go there. I think that's what
Okay.
their mindset is.
A lot more barriers
I don't know,
to
Jonah, what do you think? You work inside of publishing.
No, I totally agree. Like, even if the creator is willing to, like, let's say make a massive change to the story, like the editor doesn't like this whole arc or doesn't like
Mhm.
this whole character, or thinks they need to be completely redrawn and redone, like even if the creator said, okay, sounds good, that is a big ask, but let's say they were fine with it. It's a big ask for the editor too. I mean, editing graphic novels is a ton of work. Every stage of the graphic novel process is just an unbelievable amount of work because as an editor, you often need to read the book many, many times. Like maybe you need to read the script. Maybe you need to read the synopsis and then the script and then the sketches and then the final art and then the color and the lettering. And there's so many aspects that go into this. It's not just story, but the flow of the artwork and are things clear. And so I do think that editors shy away from doing that level of work for it's always a balancing act. It's like, if they think that it's really, really, really amazing that they're willing to put in that level of work, they might go for it. But if they think it's good but not amazing, but there's a lot of work involved, then they might shy away from it because editors, like everybody else in publishing, are just, pretty burnt out and have a lot on their plate and have a lot of projects they're already working on. So in order to make that investment of time, I think they need to really believe like the sort of like the time quality balance and workload balance there is going to make sense for them.
Mhm.
Thanks, Jonah. Um, okay, next question. At what point of a creator's career would you say they should start seeking representation?
I think that it's really good once the creator has already started putting themselves out there in various ways. I think it's really great when people start doing little, projects on their own, mini comics, zines, web comics, whatever, but just like basically forms of self-publishing that aren't necessarily like a whole, uh, whole entire graphic novel. Um, and just getting really positive feedback from the people in their community or when they go to shows, things like that. That's a good time to start asking around about agents.
Got it. Okay. Um, Now let me ask you, um, why should a graphic novelist join Kids Comics Unite?
To meet people, to meet nice people, people who are also interested in making comics. I think we have created a really welcoming community. It's very easy to join. You could just hang out, kind of lurk there if you want. But we also do a lot of events. We have workshops once a month, pretty much, even more than that sometimes. If you're a member of our studio program, which is the paid version of Kids Comics Unite, and we
Oh,
are
so
actually,
there's a free version of
there's a
Kids
free
Comics
version
Unite.
and then there's a paid version. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
It is possible down the line within the next 6 months that we might get rid of the free version. So actually, if you want to join, now is a good time to join because it is still free at the moment. But yeah, like what we were talking about at the very beginning of this call, um, it does cost money to run this thing, and we are not making a lot of money. So we're realizing like maybe we really just need to charge everybody. Um, So yeah, and then the other thing I just wanted to mention is that we just wrapped our first Kickstarter. So we did a Kickstarter for an anthology of members' work. There were 31 creators who
Wow, that's a lot.
contributed. Yes. Yes, it was a lot. And well, the way I ran it is that I heavily delegated it. So I was not directly involved in the editorial or the design.
Mhm.
I was more like the cheerleader in chief because I just wanted people to experience not just the process of finishing a comic for the anthology, but also publishing a book. What is it like to publish a book? So it was quite an experiment. It was a lot of meetings. We will joke about how many meetings that we've had to
How
create.
long did it take for that from start to finish?
About a little more than a year. We started, where are we now? A year and a half. A year and a half.
Okay. I'm gonna ask one more question. I'm gonna open it up to the to the audience. So Jen, from an agent's perspective, what do you wish more creators were aware of um when coming into trying to do this kind of work?
I would say that the more creators, I wish more creators were aware of the importance of mindset and taking care of their, well, okay, I should say, let me back up a little bit. Um, I see a lot of talented people who second guess themselves or who are perfectionists. I just see many, many um, imposter syndrome, like all the different mental hindrances that you can see. I see them out there. I've experienced them myself. I have had those and still continue to have those things. And this is why I mentioned before, like what I think is so important is just to take baby steps forward all the time and always be not just scribbling away or drawing in your studio secretly, but like putting your work publicly out there. And it doesn't have to be social media. It could, like I said, it could be going to a zine fest and just showing your zine there. But it is so, so important to take little risks and expose yourself to reactions from other people, make yourself vulnerable, because the more you do that and the more you get um, negative feedback, which you will get, it is impossible to improve your work as a creator without getting rejection and negative feedback. But you have to kind of like build up your immunity to it, I guess, or get yourself used to it. And it's gonna help you because you'll realize that you can keep going and you're getting better. Um, so that's I guess my what I the biggest mistake I see people making is just hiding and being afraid to show their work.
You know, I've been having a gradual epiphany because when I first started, I mean, I've told the story before. I took Amy Chu out to lunch, and she advised me to get started with anthologies because it's an easy way to get your work out there. It's an easy way to get artists to commit to
Hmm.
working with you because it's not a long-term commitment,
Hmm.
right? And then I moved on from that, started self-publishing and getting published, and but I have all these ideas that really are not the whole book, right?
Hmm.
And they're just sitting in my ideas folder or in my head or whatever. I'm thinking, you know, I should just go back to submitting them to anthologies, right? So, and it's a great way. I don't have to worry about publishing it or self-publishing it or printing. I just submit it. They get accepted or not, you know. So I'll probably end up doing more of those. So,
Yeah.
guys, any questions for for Janna? Glenn, go
Oh,
ahead. Or Char,
Hello.
Glenn.
Oh yeah,
Let's
okay, I can
let's
wait. Yeah.
Char, go ahead. Let's ask your
oh,
question.
are you going to use AI,
Am I going to use AI?
artificial intelligence?
Yeah. N None of the artists that I work with are extensively using AI, although I will say, like, I think like even Photoshop or a lot of image editing software has elements of AI that are built into it. Like even if you're using certain tools in Photoshop, they are they do to some extent use AI. But I personally do not represent any creators who create their work with AI.
Okay. Thank you very much, Char. Okay, Glenn, go ahead.
Hi. I
Hi.
wanted to ask, as a literary agent, do you like often negotiate for more unusual rights like merchandising or TV film options or creator ownership? And I guess that's kind of a supplementary. Like, how many of your clients like request things like that, and how successful have negotiations like that been?
Well, I don't have tons of experience with that. I have negotiated some, I have worked with film and TV agents to option some projects. None of them so far have actually been produced, but um, I don't do it by myself. I think that's one of the things about agents that is good to know is that agents work with other agents. So, as a my main focus is selling domestic rights to US publishers, but then I work with foreign rights agents who specialize in selling projects, international rights to foreign publishers. And then I work with film and TV agents to work on any projects that have film and TV interest. And I do have a colleague that I've talked to about merch rights. We haven't done any merch rights yet or commercial rights deals, but it's definitely something that's in my head because I do know that as a visual medium, there's a lot of opportunity there for comics creators. So I think the main takeaway would be that good agents have relationships with lots of other good agents.
All right, that makes sense. Thank you.
Hey, Jana. So when you're talking about when you said that you work with different other agents who work in other mediums or in other industries, um, does that also mean that you have some clients who like to DIY things and contact like or try to solicit film rights or studio or animation rights on their own, or is your contract that you have to do everything?
Oh gosh, what does my contract say about film and TV rights? I think my contract says that my agreement with my creators, it spells out the commission that I would get and says that I work with co-agents. Um, I can't remember. I mean, I know my contract states that if somebody is selling a full-length graphic novel to a domestic U.S. publisher, then I would be the one who represents them.
Got it.
But I think I'm kind of a loosey-goosey with everything beyond that. I have clients who do negotiate some of their own deals for smaller projects, and I'm fine
Right.
with that. They don't need to pay me a commission if they're dealing directly and they don't need my help. My philosophy is basically like if you need me to help with negotiation, then I will do that, and then you would pay me a commission. But if you
Got it.
don't need me for that, then you don't
Yeah,
have.
I asked because we had a creator on here and he said the same thing. He's like, for the traditional publishers, he works with the agent, but when if Marvel and DC has like a 5-pager, they just
Yeah,
the agent doesn't want to get involved or does not get involved.
yeah.
So she had a question. Do you want to ask it or should I just read it out? She? I'm not even sure if I'm saying that right. Okay, I will read it out. Is editing the manuscript before submission a part of an agent's job, or do agents now expect manuscript to be submission ready?
I don't think there's a black and white answer to that. I do I mean, I do read manuscripts and scripts and offer feedback. And depending on the state of the manuscript, if I do sometimes recommend to creators, like, I think it would benefit you to hire a freelance editor to work on this with you. So sometimes I'll recommend that. If I feel like there's potential here, but it just needs a lot of work, and I don't get paid really for a lot of that upfront work. So I have to kind of weigh a lot of factors to decide how much time to invest in something before I go out on submission with it. And so there are occasions where I will recommend people that they work with a freelance editor. I don't know if that's exactly answering the question.
Okay, well, I'm not sure either if that answers the question. Okay, sure, sure. Any more questions, guys?
Um, yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead,
Mhm.
Tyler.
Okay, um, so I am working on a couple graphic novel projects in middle grade,
Mhm.
and I'm not ready to submit yet.
Mhm.
I'm getting close though. So I was just wondering, if I were to query you,
Mhm.
what do you represent?
Well, I pretty much I'm trying right now to focus on graphic novels. So that's narrows it down to some extent. Beyond that, I do occasionally take on projects that are aimed at adults, but I mostly work on middle grade and YA. And within those categories, I've worked on many different genres. So I don't think that I limit myself with genres that much. Um, I am not a big horror person, but I actually did just go out on submission with an adult horror graphic novel that was because of one of my clients. You know, he wrote it and he likes it, and it's really disturbing. And I just was like, okay. But yeah, that's the only genre I would say that is that I it's a little, yeah. I don't know. Are you doing horror?
No, I'm actually doing action, adventure, sci-fi, superhero.
Okay, okay. Well, okay, that is interesting. Superhero is not really my cup of tea.
Okay.
That is the one genre the only superhero story I really like is G-Man. Do you guys know G-Man? Does anybody here
Oh.
know by Mike Giarrusso? Or wait, no.
Oh yeah.
Wait,
Chris
Chris
Chirruso.
Yeah,
Giarrusso,
you
not
mean
Mike.
Oh.
G-Man?
Yes.
No, G-Man. He does
Yes.
these little kid
Chris Giarrusso.
superheroes.
It's a parody of superhero.
Yeah.
So that's why I like it a lot, I think.
Okay. I heard of him. I'll look it up.
Oh, it's I think it's out of print, which is just a
Yeah.
tragedy because it's
Oh.
so funny and so good.
Hmm.
Jonah, I wish Scholastic would pick it up and redo it. Have you ever seen it, Jonah?
No, I've never heard of it.
Okay,
But
well, I'm just gonna tell you guys, there's 3 books, 3 volumes. They were published by Image. Image doesn't really know what they're doing when it comes to the children's market at all. And book 1 is good. Book 2 and book 3 are freaking amazing. They are so hilarious. So if I could like do my dream thing, I would work with Chris to revise book 1 and then just publish book 1, 2, and 3 again. Redo it, repackage it.
Would you reach out to Chris?
Well, I think he has an agent
Oh,
already.
okay.
I
Got
love
it.
Chris. If he didn't have an agent, I would work with him.
Yeah, I used to see him a lot and during my early days. I haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah,
So
he's one of those creators who's so talented, but hasn't really caught a break, I feel like, in
yeah.
as much as he should, given his level of talent.
We had before I ask this question from She. So you just mentioned that in a horse, you don't usually do horror, but you just recently did horror. And I think we touched on earlier some of the other genres. A new genre that maybe not that new anymore, but it was new when I first heard of it is graphic medicine,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we talked about how mainstream comics has sort of like stunted itself with the genres that they stick to.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about how we just barely scratched the surface. Are there any genres that you think would lend itself very well to the graphic novel format that hasn't been used yet?
I'm not sure that there are any that haven't been touched at all, but I just do feel that there are many genres that could be expanded upon greatly. Basically every genre. I think mystery, nonfiction, romance. I think sci-fi is already pretty well covered in the comics format. Um, Fantasy is already quite strong, but I think that can still grow. I mean, another category people love is humor comics. We can never get enough great, funny comics. And I personally, that's actually one of my favorite categories is humor. I just love funny comics. So maybe I have the taste of a third grader or something.
No, I think I still have my Calvin and Hobbes essential book.
Uh-huh.
So, it's like can
Yeah.
never go wrong with humor.
Yeah.
So she's asking another question. Uh, how many percentage of the graphic novel should be done for submission? Say the page count is 300. How many pages should be done? Or how many pages should be penciled? Is a full manuscript required?
Um, so the answer to that question is like there is no magic number or I can't give an exact recommendation. Basically, you should complete enough pieces of final art that the editor can look at it and get a very good sense of what the final product will look like. And because it is so much work, usually I think people tend to err towards like the least amount of pages that they can actually create for their proposal, which is totally fine. So if maybe you had 6 to 8 spreads, perhaps, and maybe only a few of those pages are final art, but the rest are tight pencils or something like that. Jonah, what do you think?
yeah, I agree. I think having sequential pages so that not only to get a sense of the art style, but the storytelling, like, you know, I think a mistake that sometimes people make is, oh, here's some cool looking character art. It's like, okay, great. So you can draw, but can you tell a story in comics? What is the flow like?
Mhm.
Are you able to structure a page and pace it out and, set up the text correctly and do all of those things? that's something that I personally look for. I don't know. I mean, I've usually said like 20 or 30, but that sort of lines up with what you're saying, 6 to 8 spreads. That's a little less. That's 12
Mhm.
to 16 pages,
What
which
about
I
the
think would
manuscript?
probably be fine. Yeah, I mean the manuscript, like I think that the two key ingredients to a pitch packet, and pitch packet, it's definitely more of an art than a science, but I think that the two key ingredients are at least a dozen sequential pages of like finished or near finished comics and a plot synopsis of the entire thing. You
Mhm.
don't necessarily need to have a 100% written script, but giving the editor a sense of, what does this whole story look like? Where is this gonna go? Um, and a synopsis is also a thing that can be, obviously easier to edit because it's nice and short, and it gives the editor an opportunity to potentially work with you on like big story changes if that's a thing that might be required before you have to get into the much more laborious process of drawing.
Mhm.
Thanks, Jonah. Now, my next question, unless somebody else has a question, anybody?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, Tyler, go ahead.
So I'm in putting out this comic strip on the internet. It's a funny one.
Mhm.
Speaking of funny comics,
Mhm.
and I've been posting it to my social media, and I've been looking for a place where um there where people are public are like putting like like maybe some place on the internet where the people are that's for kids the comics for kids.
Mhm.
Um to give it more exposure.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if you know any places like that, but I guess that goes back to the question of the accessibility issue.
Yeah, well, there is the Sunday Haha, which is a newsletter put out by a group of comics creators. Do you know?
Yeah, I found out about that actually, and it's been a while. It's been a while, but I since I last contacted them, so I don't I forgot the details at this point. But they said it was someone told me on LinkedIn that it was discontinued, and it's being replaced by another I think it's a newspaper or it was called it's going to be called Hullabaloo or something.
Hullabaloo? Oh, I feel like I've heard of this.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
And
but it's coming out later this year. So
Mhm.
I thought at least last time I looked into it.
Mhm.
Uh, so I mean I don't know if you how aware you are of any of that, but yeah, I did find out about that.
Yeah, well, I think there are I see this kind of collaborations popping up inside of Kids Comics Unite. I know there's a group inside of the community who publish something called Core Tunes, which is kind of like comics that have an educational component to them. And and then Sunday Haha, is just they were basically friends, I think, who just decided to start publishing together this comics newsletter for kids. So I see collaborations like this popping up all the time. So I think part of it is just getting into various communities where you can meet other creators and then possibly start something together. Um, but I do agree with you. There isn't really a kids webcomics platform. This is something I think about all the time. And it's my dream. It's what I wanted to do. I want to start a kids comics platform, like webcomics platform.
I should just ask my kids because I know they read a lot of web comics,
Uh-huh.
but I think it's like webtoons and the
Yeah.
traditional thing. However, I'd like to answer that question. I mean, I'm not sure if this is the answer, but a few weeks ago I attended a symposium on storytelling and I think future of storytelling or something like that. And one of the speakers talked about how the different social media belong to different generations.
Mm-hmm.
Like Facebook is going to be baby boomers and Gen X,
Mm-hmm.
and then Instagram is going to be, like I guess, the millennials and things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
really, the kids are what the kids are on. Like for me, my book is middle grade. So that young, the speaker was saying would be TikTok and Snapchat,
Hmm.
right? So I've actually gone ahead and found somebody who can animate my comics, and I'm posting it on TikTok. And I have to say, in the past, even I post on Instagram as well. And I remember when I would just post the static panels, I get maybe 10, 20 likes, and now I'm getting like 170, 200 likes on the
Hmm.
animated art. So that's food for thought right there. So think about which social media platform belongs to the generation that you're trying to reach.
The other
Actually,
oh, go
oh, I'm
ahead.
sorry, but I've been posting actually I've been posting my shit to TikTok. I didn't animate it, but yeah, it definitely gets the most engagement there.
Yeah, but
Um,
I think for me it's the animation makes a big difference because they don't have to read, they can just watch it, right? So I'm sorry, Johnny, you were gonna say something?
Well, I was gonna say that I think that one key principle that I think is important is that a lot of social media is about discovery, like helping new people find out about your work. But what the ideal is to try to get people from those discovery platforms to a relationship platform as quickly as possible. In other words, get them onto
Ooh, I
your
like
mailing
that. Yeah,
list
yeah,
so
yeah.
that you can have a direct connection with them because social media algorithms are the worst, and those platforms are totally geared towards using you to make money for themselves, in my opinion. And like if you have a small mailing list, but it's highly engaged, people who love what you do and are willing to be long-term supporters, that is so much more valuable than having an Instagram account with several thousand followers or something like that, in my opinion.
Janna, I have
Good.
a question about YA, which is a selfish question because that's the medium that I'm currently creating in. But you know, comics for younger kids have all of this infrastructure surrounding them,
Mhm.
librarians, teachers, parents, book fairs, right? Like there's so many different places and people that are presenting these books to younger kids and encouraging them to read. And a lot of it is tied up with literacy.
Mhm.
And adults, of course, are consumers who have money and who can
Mhm.
actually go and buy what they want. But teenagers are this weird middle category where they don't get as much like institutional or structural support. They get some, but not as much. But at the same time, they're not full-fledged adults with disposable income. So what do you think about like YA as a category, and what the future of YA graphic novels might be, and what might be the key to kind of unlocking that category?
Well, I would say, I mean, right now, I feel like a lot of teen readers who like comics are just flocking to Webtoon. That's what I think. And Webtoons is just yet another one of those platforms, in my opinion, that is not very, like, doesn't have the long-term interests of the creators at its heart. Um, so I'm just hopeful that the future that there will be more alternatives in the future as people just get more and more and more frustrated with these big tech platforms and how abusive and exploitative they are. I think like Cartoonist Co-op is an interesting example of, a cooperative effort of creators to come together, but it's not aimed at YA, of course. I'm just saying like I hope that there are sort of flourishing of these sorts of consortium efforts geared towards all different readerships that come into being as we try to escape from the clutches of these tech platforms. And I think I guess I'm cautiously optimistic because I think human beings are very social cooperative creatures and many of us are extremely upset with things that these tech companies are doing and we do have agency and the more that people try things and they work, if there let's just say you had Webtoon and then you had another platform, but that was a much offered a more fair and equitable model for creators, which one would they want to go to? Well, okay, the problem is the audience, right? Um, the reason Webtoons is so huge right now is because they have the readership. And so how do you build that readership? That's tough. And that's the problem with the tech platform model because you have venture capital that comes in and they just put so much money up front to get to scale. It's like the whole attract and then extract model. Um, so yeah, we are facing a pretty uphill battle, but I think it's worth the fight. I don't, that was a very roundabout answer to your question. I don't think I think it's tough. I think you've
Yeah.
identified that it's very tough.
I asked it because it is tough because I don't have a good answer either. I think about like how Smile kind of unlocked middle grade graphic
Mhm.
novels, and that was like the seminal work. And I wonder if there's a book that will happen at some point that like every teenager will read. It'll be like the Harry Potter of comics or something, you know?
Well, you don't think that Heartstopper is kind of like that?
Yeah, no, I mean that's a really good point. And with the show and Heartstopper, yeah, I mean it sort of folds everything in because it started as a web comic and then it became a print graphic novel and then it became a TV show. So it's this like multimedia.
Hmm.
Um, maybe that is it. Maybe we just need to make more Heartstoppers. I don't know. I mean that nobody should make Heartstopper or try to make another Heartstopper probably
Hmm.
because there should only be one. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder. I
I
wonder if that is the unlocking property and we just don't know it yet or I don't know.
I
I'm
don't know
rambling
about
now.
I don't know about YA, but and from what I've observed, every highly lucrative IP out there becomes cross media. It doesn't stay in comics. It becomes an animation, becomes a movie or maybe a video game. But I mean, I'm sure there are exceptions. I haven't seen a Smile movie yet or a Smile cartoon, but but
Hmm.
there
I
has
think Raina specifically doesn't want her
uh
work. Is that I
yeah.
don't, well, I don't, it's speculative, but I feel like I heard that. I'm not sure.
And obviously there are exceptions. I mean, there's never been a Calvin and Hobbes anything
Hmm.
aside from the cartoon, right?
It's
But same
possible that
thing.
Raina's kind of following in his Bill Watterson's
Waterson's
footsteps.
footsteps, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't want anything.
Hmm.
He didn't want it in any other media. Let me ask one more question because I know that you are an early bird, and
I
then
told you that, yeah.
and then we'll call it a day. So just to illustrate how the relationship between a client and an agent works, can you tell us a unusual story of an unusual, like process of and how it and what happened in the end
Hmm.
as far as selling a book?
Well, actually, one of the very first books that I sold, I'm going to show it to you here. It does have a kind of funny story behind it. So it's this book, Bounce Back by Misako Rocks. Um, so I'm going to go way back in time when I was working at Scholastic in the early 2000s. This was back in the day when people would bring physical portfolios to the office, and then there would be like a day where they'd be dropped off, and then we'd lug them all up to the art department and we would look through them to be, looking for new talent. And Misako came to New York City from Wisconsin, where she was living at the time, to bring her portfolio to Scholastic. And I looked through it and gave her some feedback, basically like it's not really there yet. You need to work on it some more. And what was really cool about her is that she showed up almost exactly a year later and she had diligently worked on everything, all the notes I had given her, she had addressed all of them. I still thought she needed more work, but she did end up getting a book deal at Hyperion, I believe, and she actually published a couple of books. But we basically became friends after that, even though I didn't accept her work as an editor. Um, but we just stayed in touch, and then over the years, all through all the ups and downs of my career and through her, she also had a lot of ups and downs because she published three books in succession around like 2000. I feel like it was like between 2006 and 2008 or so, and none of them sold really well. which is like the kiss of death in publishing if your books come out and don't sell very well. So she kind of lost her mojo in the US book market, and she ended up starting to do some books in Japan. She's from Japan originally. So she published a bunch of books in Japan that were really funny. They were like how to meet an American boyfriend or something like that. They were like how-to books, or how to learn English the Misako way. I think that's another one. Anyway, so but she wanted to get back into comics, and then she and I reconnected right when I was starting to do freelance editing again, and she asked me to help her with a script, which I did. We worked together on it, and we had so much fun working together. And I thought, well, maybe I wonder if I might know some editors who'd be interested in this project. So I asked Misako if she wanted me to try sending it out as an agent, and she said yes. This was before I officially like announced that I was an agent. So I sent it out to a bunch of editors at like a lot of the publishers that you would expect, and we just got rejections, a bunch of rejections. But I felt like from all those rejections that people were saying like, yeah, this is interesting, but just not quite there yet. So I said to Misako, I feel like we're almost there. We just need to get it like a little, tighten up the story a little bit more. So what we decided to do was a round of beta readers. And this process was so cool, and I wish more creators would do this. So what we did is um, she had her manuscript as a Google Doc, and both of us reached out to as many people as we could think of who might either be interested in middle grade friendship story graphic novels, or people who had children who were in the target age group. So it was like parents we knew, librarians, teachers, friends, literally anybody. We just blanket emailed as many people as we could possibly think of. And we had created a form where people could fill out and say like, yes, I'm willing to be a beta reader. And as a result of all this outreach, we had maybe 100 people who said they would do beta reading of this manuscript. And we sent it out to those 100 people, and 70 of them ended up going into this manuscript and leaving comments. And we just had one Google Doc, and it was locked so people couldn't edit it, but they could leave the comments. And there were like hundreds of comments in this manuscript. Hundreds. And we spent, I would say, a good 2 months basically going through the comments line by line and discussing them. Like, did we agree with the comment? And if we agreed with it, how was she going to address it? And then she would just make notes to herself. And of course, some of the comments we didn't agree with and we didn't make changes. So whenever you're responding to critiques of your work, you have to listen to that inner voice, like, do I agree with this, or do I think they're onto something here, or do they just not understand? But if they don't understand, then that is still telling you something. Maybe what you need to do is something different than what they're telling you, but it is important when you get somebody telling you, I don't understand, or this isn't working. So anyway, as a result of all this work, we had a completely revised manuscript, and we went out on submission again, and we did get an offer, and that's what ended up with this book at Macmillan. So it was such an extensive process. I think it's a funny story, partly because I could probably never do that again. That was before I had a bunch of clients. I had the bandwidth that I could spend with her working so hard on this project. Um, but I'm glad we did it, and I think that it's possible for you on your own to do something like that, reaching out to get beta readers. And it actually kind of seeds your audience of your actual book eventually, because I think she thanked all the people in the acknowledgments of the book who did the beta reading. Oh yeah, she has it in the back of the book. It says my beta readers. I don't know if you can see that.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome. I should do that. Anyways, thank you very much, Janna. As I know there were a few questions that I gave you that we didn't get to. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap it up? Anything you want to
Um,
share?
well, I guess if you're interested to take a look at our Kickstarter, I should put the link in the chat.
Yes, please
Because
do.
that'll give you a sense of the anthology that we put together as part of the Kids Comics Unite group. Hold on, I'm just copying the link. It's officially closed, but you can still back it. We're gonna turn off that backer button probably within the next week or two once we have finalized what we're gonna do with the printing. But yeah, and then Kids Comics Unite, I should put that in the chat as well. Oh, I guess I should also mention Pitch Fest. Pitch Fest is a graphic novel pitch competition that we do once a year. We used to do it in the fall, but this year we did it in the spring, and I think we're gonna move forward with that going forward. So it should be happening again in spring of 2026. And the really cool thing about this competition that I'm very proud of is that we have a jury. So we have a group of agents and editors who are reviewing all of the pitches that get submitted to us for Pitch Fest. And that means that you have like 20 industry pros who are looking at your work. So it's a really awesome opportunity.
Could we
Awesome.
share our website and social media? If,
Yeah,
if I don't know if anyone
sure.
else is interested in doing that, but uh, I'm gonna pull up my website and
Okay, I'll
Sure.
wait.
While you're doing that, Tyler, I'm gonna just announce our next speakers. So on June 3, we have Josh Adams, who won a Pulitzer Prize for his graphic novel. And then on June 25, we have the return of Andrea Coven, who was
I,
an
Ramon, I saw that on your meetup page, and I was so curious the way you titled it, The Return of Andre Colvin.
yeah, she was a guest very early on when she was an editor-in-chief at Lion Forge.
Oh,
And we've kept in touch all these years. She's always been very supportive of anything that I do. And so I said, you know what, it's time for you to come back. So she said, okay. So,
oh my gosh, I want to come to that. I love her. She's so cool.
and what's not on the meetup page, because this is more of a personal project, is on Sunday, I am organizing the Filipino American Comic and Book Festival in at Madison Park on 27th and Madison. It coincides with the Philippine Independence Day Parade. So if you want to try Filipino food and check out some Filipino comics or Filipino American graphic novelists and writers, come by. I'm posting the link in the chat. Glenn is one of the exhibitors.
Hey.
Um, and
That's
it's just gonna
cool.
be a small thing. I think it's just gonna be there's only 12 of us. Uh Starting small and see if it gains traction, then we might do it again. But I was thinking that, like my friend Fabrice that had done Jewish Con a few years ago. And then I
Hmm.
know there's the one in Harlem. And then Amy Chu
Hmm.
recently got me into the Chinese one, even though I'm not
Hmm.
Chinese. So I figured, oh, well, let's do a Filipino one. So it's this Sunday from 12:30 to 5:30 at 27th and Madison.
Very, very cool.
Mhm.
Ramon, are you connected with Isabel Rojas?
No, I am not.
Oh my God, she is so cool. You got to get connected with her.
Okay.
Um, let me.
Yeah, there was a bunch of people who were approaching me after we had locked in all the tables. So
Mhm.
we'll
Putting
see.
I just put her website in the chat.
Clicking on it and saving it now.
Yeah.
So anyways, thank you very much, Janna, for coming out. And I'm sure some of these guys are going to be checking out Kids Comics Unite and the Pitch Fest as well. And hopefully we'll get to interact again more in the future and so
Yeah, that would be great. It was great hanging out with you guys.
okay guys, if you could
Bye.
just give her a nice little love for Janna, that would be great.
Thanks, Janna. Good to see you. Also,
Yeah.
congrats to your client Debbie on the Eisner nom.
Oh,
I love
yes,
that
yes.
book.
And you too.
Thank
Yes.
you.
All right.
Okay
Well,
guys, and I'll
good
let
night.
everybody know when this is going to be posted online.
Okay.
Okay,
All
good night
right.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.